It feels like that music has a little more meaning this week, and that is because football actually starts this week. We love the preseason, we love training camp, but it's the regular season and inevitably the playoffs and all the way up to the Super Bowl that we come to see. And it all begins in earnest this week. And it is time to talk New York Giants football. Today's broadcast brought to you by our friends at Play It Again Sports. It's the Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital at MC Show Digital. If you like our video, hit the thumbs up and, of course, subscribe at MC Show Digital. We are closing in on our 300 subscribers, Boy Green, which will give away this David Tyree autographed The Catch photo, framed and everything, sitting on my wall. Perhaps I'll display it a little bit later in our broadcast, but I don't want to delay our guest. He's our Giants insider from Big Blue View. Let's talk with Ed Valentine. Hey, Ed, how are you?
I'm good, but I'm trying to recover because while I was sitting in the back room waiting, you said playoffs.
Yes,
and I'm not sure that I remember what those are. You said playoffs, so I need a minute to recover.
Playoffs.
The Giants,
talk about playoffs.
Those two things haven't exactly met. We saw it a few years ago with Daniel Jones, right? That kind of one-off, but that was about it. Well, I don't want to talk about the playoffs yet, Ed. What I do want to talk about is real football. Look, you've been covering the Giants for a long time, so let's talk about the difference between preseason football and regular season football. How much is it amplified? We see it in other sports. If you look at the regular season of hockey to the playoffs of hockey, no comparison. Same thing in the NBA. Here we come from preseason to regular season in the NFL. How amplified is it all?
Well, you have to understand, 3-0 in the preseason is nice. 107 points in the preseason, 30 some odd points a game is nice. But the results really don't mean anything. We've seen teams before go 3-0, 4-0, have really good preseasons, and then, stink up the joint in the regular season. And we've seen it the other way where teams weren't good in the preseason and had good years. What matters really is some of what goes around it. Does the team come out of the preseason healthy? Which, cross your fingers, and I almost hate to say it, the Giants did not suffer a single major injury in the spring, in training camp, or in a preseason game, to a key player. Now, there's still questions about Andrew Thomas's availability, for week one, for the first couple of weeks of the season, but nobody got hurt. And I think the other thing that you take away was just how the summer went. A lot of good feelings around the Giants. If you looked around the league, if you looked around the NFC East, where was there a lot of noise? There was a whole lot of noise coming out of Washington because of the Terry McLaurin situation. A whole lot of noise coming out of Dallas, which is now without its best player. What noise came out of New Jersey? The only noise that came out of New Jersey was praise for Jackson Dart and Abdul Carter. So for me, it's the feeling that it's not the results. It's the fact that right now there's optimism, there's good vibes. If you saw the final preseason game, those guys were having a blast. And to me, it's those kinds of things, that you look for more than the results of the games, because the results of those games are largely decided by guys who aren't on the roster anymore.
All right, we start off with week one. The New York Giants travel to play the Washington Commanders Sunday, September 7th. The Commanders are a 5.5-point favorite according to the current Vegas line as we're all sitting here for this game. The Commanders swept the Giants last season, but Ed, before that fun fact I just said, the Giants had won 3 in a row. So what are the early vibes of an NFC East rivalry renewed for the season opener?
Well, there are a lot of people who think that the Giants are going to start the season 0-4. It's Washington, it's Dallas, it's Kansas City, and then it's the Chargers before they get the Saints in week 5. But look, we'll just keeping it specifically about the Commanders. The Giants lost twice to Washington last year, but they lost by a total of 8 points. They lost a game where they lost their field goal kicker. They lost a game 21-18 where they lost their field goal kicker on the opening play of the game, which, by the way, didn't even count because there was a penalty. So you lose 21-18. You score 3 touchdowns. You give up 6 field goals. You become the first team in NFL history to have that happen, where you score 3 touchdowns, don't give one up, and you still lose a game. And or where you, because they scored, they had to keep going for 2. They gave up 7 field goals in that game to lose that game. So and they lose that game because Malik Neighbors drops a ball that hit him right in the numbers inside of 2 minutes that would have set them up for a game-winning score. So how often is that going to happen? I look at Washington, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't think Washington's defense was mediocre. I don't think Washington's defense is any better this year. They did sign Von Miller, but Von Miller's 36 years old. And other than, situationally here and there, how much is he actually going to add? I don't know. And I look at Washington, and they're built around their offense. But I think they've got 2 injuries on their offensive line. Noah Brown, one of their wide receivers, has missed a lot of time in training camp. Terry McLaurin, of course, missed most of training camp. You just wonder how ready that offense is going to be in Washington to really fire on all cylinders, and especially against this hyped up Giants defense. So I look at the game, and I'm not ready to make a prediction yet. I'll do that later in the week at Big Blue View, but I look at Washington as being very vulnerable in week 1.
Hey, Ed, quick follow-up here. What is the health status of the Giants kicker at this point heading into week 1?
Well, the last time we saw Graham Gano kick in a game was week 1 against the Bills. And he made me look like a dummy. All right. He made me look like a dummy because he's 38 years old. He's in his 17th year in the league.
Good Lord. And
he's had knee and hamstring and all sorts of leg injuries the last 2 years that have landed him on IR. He had knee surgery. A few years back in Carolina, he had a devastating, knee injury that cost him time. And here I was writing all off season. I just don't know if you can trust Graham Gano to kick those long field goals anymore. Gano's the guy that has the most 50-plus yard field goals in Giants franchise history. And what does he do the first time he steps on the field against Buffalo? He hits a 53-yard field goal. And then what does he follow that up with? 51 and 50-yard field goals. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay. So now you've made me look stupid. Right? Which is probably, from a Giants perspective, that's a good thing. So he looks healthy right now. Cross your fingers. Again, he's 38 years old. He's had those leg injuries the last couple of years. The Giants are counting on him for at least 1 more year. So, but right now he looks good.
Talking with Ed Valentine, our Giants insider from Big Blue View. Today's broadcast brought to you by our friends at Play It Again Sports. We'll hear a little bit more about Play It Again in just a little bit. You mentioned the defense, Ed, and while I want to get back into the X's and O's against Washington, let me talk to you about the defense and how much things changed now that Micah Parsons is no longer in the division. Let me ask you this question. So where does the Giants defense rank in the NFC East? Are they now the second best defense? I'm not ready to move them ahead of Philadelphia, but I think number 2 might be attainable at this point.
Oh, I do. I absolutely think it's attainable, if not already. You can't say it's written in stone because this defense hasn't played a game, but I absolutely think it's attainable. What is the Dallas defense without Micah Parsons? Their premier game-changing player, maybe the premier game-changing player on the defensive side in football. And Kenny Clark has had a nice career, but Kenny Clark he's on the downside of that career. And yes, they got a bunch of draft picks from the Packers, but those draft picks aren't going to be there for a couple of years yet. So now is the time to take advantage of Dallas. But absolutely, I think you could make an argument that if you were ranking them 1 to 4 right now, you'd put the Giants number 2. Because as I said, Washington's defense was mediocre a year ago. I think they won games by outscoring teams. And I don't think their defense is any better than it was. So I absolutely think you could make the argument that the Giants are the second best defense in the division.
So go ahead, Ed. Rank them. You got 4 teams. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Eagles, Giants, Commanders, Cowboys.
How about them Cowboys, boy Green?
Sorry, Dallas. Sorry,
Dallas. Jerry
But...
Jones. I think that Jerry Jones has forgotten that he runs a football team where the results, when you put your guys in those pads that they wear, Jerry, if you remember that, if you put your guys in those pads and all the people come to watch them play, I think Jerry has forgotten that the results of those days matter. He just wants to be in the entertainment industry.
What an industry it is. But speaking of that Giants defense, let's show this guy up, Jaden Daniels. He captivated the league last year, was clearly the best rookie quarterback, could run the ball, could pass the ball all over the place. And the Giants had, you could sort of evaluate the 2 games they had against him. You mentioned one that the judge prevented a touchdown from happening. And then the second game, Jaden Daniels was effective as well, running the football and passing it. But is there something to it, Ed, that regardless of how good a quarterback can look in his first year, that in that second year, when teams have all offseason to prepare for a guy, that it's a different reality for that quarterback? Do you expect that same sophomore slump, for lack of a better word, for Jaden Daniels as he starts his second season?
I don't know that I do. I mean, Jaden Daniels is a guy who I thought at the beginning of the year, I thought the Commanders did a great job sort of protecting him and not asking him to do too much. They were asking him to throw, but a lot of it was simple, easy read kind of stuff. Now, what could happen here, as I said, they've got a couple of injuries on their offensive line. They've had some injuries out at wide receiver. Terry McLaurin didn't have much, if any, of a training camp. What could happen here is the pieces around Jaden Daniels are maybe not as good as they were a year ago. But I'm certainly not going to sit here and say that I expect Jaden Daniels to take a step back. I think maybe the offense as a whole in Washington might, at least early in the season. So if you're the Giants, and I'm right about that, you want to take advantage of that this Sunday.
Ed, we believe that the Giants defense is going to be better this year. I mean, the personnel says that it will be. But let's talk about who's coaching the defense and whether or not it will be let loose. I mean, I yearn for the Steve Spagnuolo days, man. Let's let these guys go here early. How do you think the Giants defensive coordinator will play it?
I think he has no choice but to get out of his comfort zone a little bit. And I think Shane Bowen knows that. He seems to have, in the couple times that we've had a chance to talk to him, he seems to understand that he's got all these pieces and he can't just he can't just line them up and say, my 11's just going to go beat your 11, that he's got to look for matchups. He's got to move guys around. We've seen Abdul Carter, line up all over the place, over the center, at defensive tackle, at defensive end. We've seen him line up, as a straight up edge guy. We've seen Brian Burns move around a little bit. I think he knows that he's got to get out of his comfort zone. That to his credit, I thought last year, when you really look at it, he used the blitz more last year than he actually ever did in Tennessee. He played more man coverage than he ever did as defensive coordinator in Tennessee. So I think that Shane Bowen might be a little bit more flexible than people want to give him credit for. But we'll find out starting Sunday in Washington.
Yeah, not the easiest quarterback in the world to contain. We'll see if the Giants can get the job done. We're inside the Giants. We're talking with Ed Valentine, Big Blue View. Don't forget to like our video, hit the thumbs up, and, of course, subscribe at MC Show Digital. Support all our sponsors that you see in the upper right corner of your screen. As a matter of fact, let's take a moment and get to learn a little bit more about one of our sponsors. Today's title sponsor, Play It Again Sports.
Warm weather sports season is here, and if you want to gear up and save money on some of the top brands of golf, soccer, and baseball equipment, and much more, Play It Again Sports can be your solution. With both new and gently used gear, Play It Again has prices way less than regular retail stores. And for all you golfers out there, get some quick money for those clubs you've got stashed away and are collecting dust. Play It Again is always looking for quality gear. No appointment necessary. Just bring it into the store. Play It Again Sports in the DeWitt Town Center on Erie Boulevard. Don't spend more. Play it again. Play It Again Sports. Syracuse.com.
All right, back with Ed Valentine at MC Show Digital. Ed, I want to ask you about the most pressing question coming out of this preseason. Yes, it seems like all the beat guys, everybody is down on this one question. You talked about the lack of controversy here in Giants camp, but there's one big piece of controversy. Who's number 2?
Oh, my Lord.
Does it really matter? Let's talk about it. Backup quarterback role. Is it Jameis Winston at this point? Brian Dable's being quiet about it. Joe Shane's not talking about it. Or is it indeed Jackson Dart?
I don't know, but I think when I go to the facility later this week, I think I'm going to bring some pliers with me, and I'm going to start pulling Dable's fingernails out to try to get an answer. But he's not going to say. Look, I don't think anybody would have thought in the spring or even at the beginning of training camp that Jackson Dart would be QB2. But I do think there's a possibility that happens on Sunday. Dart was really good, all spring, and he was really good all summer and into the preseason. There are analysts out there banging the table for him to start week 1. And I don't know for sure what they're going to do, but it wouldn't shock me at all if Dart is the backup quarterback. I honestly think that with what Dart showed in the preseason, it wouldn't surprise me even if he's number 3. Okay. Let's suppose after a couple of weeks, Russell Wilson gets hurt. The assumption has always been Russell Wilson gets hurt, Jameis Winston takes over as the starter, and Dart becomes the backup. It wouldn't surprise me if it goes the other way, if they jump straight to starting Jackson Dart. I think this idea that Dart's going to have a redshirt year, that's not going to happen unless the Giants go, 12-5 and threaten to win the division. Which, although I think the Giants are better, that's not happening. So I think the idea that he sits all year and doesn't start games at some point, he's going to start a few games before the year's over.
So what are fair expectations for the QB1 there? We're talking about QB2, QB3. What about QB1? Dangerous Russell Wilson. Mr. Unlimited is going to be the guy for the New York Giants. And how unlimited is this Giants offense going to be with him at the helm?
Well, it's funny because I was asked a question about that, a very similar question by the folks over at SB Nation's Commanders website, Hogs Haven. So I see great minds think alike and all that. So I actually looked it up because the thing about Russell Wilson that everybody talks about is the deep pass, the moon ball, all that stuff. Okay. And Wilson showed all summer that he can still throw that thing. There was the one against was it against
it was
the Jets?
We already know it was.
Yes,
yep, right at the beginning of the game. Yeah,
but he threw that ball between 60 and 65 yards in the air, and he dropped that thing right into the bucket to a wide receiver perfectly in stride. When's the last time we saw a Giants quarterback do that? Okay. I looked at the numbers, and the Giants were on throws of over 20 yards a year ago. They were 12 out of 56. 12 out of 56. That's about 21 or 22%. Okay. And Russell Wilson was 22 out of 44. Exactly 50%. The only quarterback in the league with a higher percentage on those deep throws was Sam Darnold. So I don't know how long he's going to be the quarterback, but what I do know is the big play, the deep shot, which really hasn't been a viable part of the Giants offense, for the last 3-4 years. That is a viable key part of this offense, whether it's Wilson or whether it's a Dart or whether it's Jameis Winston, who's got a better arm than either one of them.
Ed, I haven't asked you this yet, but let me ask it. Since we're talking about quarterbacks, how surprised are you that Daniel Jones won the job in Indianapolis?
I'm not surprised at all. To be honest with you, I'm not surprised at all, because this is harsh, but Anthony Richardson is not an NFL quarterback. He's just not. I don't care if he was drafted 4th overall. He's an athlete playing quarterback who was not a good college quarterback. He was just a good college athlete playing quarterback, and he can throw the ball a long way. And the Colts looked at all that athleticism and, oh my God, he can throw the ball from here to Canada, and thought, oh, we have to build our franchise around this guy. And then, of course, instead of developing the guy, they threw him out there week 1 and fed him to the wolves.
Yes.
And Daniel Jones, for all the things that he's not, he is a competent quarterback who can, at the very least, run an offense. He can run an offense. He can, for the most part, put his team in the right place. Can he always execute those plays? We know the answer to that is no. But I'm not surprised that the Colts, in a situation where, their head coach is on the hot seat, he can't afford to. He doesn't have time to watch Anthony Richardson try to develop and not be able to read the most elementary blitz that a defense can throw at him. He doesn't have time for that. So I'm not surprised at all, because Daniel Jones at least gives them a chance to be a mediocre team.
I guess with that last answer, maybe this answers it for me, but is there any way or anything that Daniel Jones can do with the Colts this season that makes the Giants go, oh boy, and it makes him look bad in any way if he excels?
Oh, sure. If he goes out there and throws for 4,000 yards and throws 30 some odd touchdown passes, which he never did as a Giant, if he goes out there and puts up those kind of numbers, and the Colts are in the playoff hunt and maybe they sneak into the playoffs, then sure, he embarrasses the Giants. Doesn't mean they were wrong to move on, because you can only go by what you see when you see it. But you remember John Mara saying years ago, we've done everything possible to screw this kid up, and I've always thought Daniel Jones, limited although he might have been, I always thought Daniel Jones should have been what Ryan Tannehill was at his best, what Andy Dalton was at his best. He should have been able to play to that level. And other than that 1 year, the Giants never got that out of him. So it's damning for the Giants in some way if he plays, to a level that he's never played before.
All right, Ed, I won't ask you for a prediction on the game this week. And I always say it, the predictions are worth the paper that we write them on. Might as well just tear them up and burn them, even though Boy Green and I will be doing predictions on every single game against the spread.
Please tune in later this week.
Please tune in on Friday.
Oh, a little promo action. All right.
But let me ask you this question, which I think is a more important question to this Giants team this year. What equals success in terms of wins and losses for the New York Football Giants this year? And maybe even add the caveat or include it as a B part of the question. What do the Giants need to do to get their GM and their coach off the hot seat as well? So let's address both things. What's successful for the team, and then what's successful for the coach and the GM, who we know kind of entered the season in a little bit of a quagmire.
You know, guys, that's such a hard question. I get asked that all the time.
Of course.
And I think that they won 3 games last year. Okay. So if you really need to put a number on it, if they win 6 or 7 games, okay, if they win 6 or 7 games, and I don't want to say that automatically means it's a successful season, it's a good year, Brian Daboll should come back, all of that.
Right.
But if they win 6 or 7 games, that's twice as many as they won a year ago. And it's hard to look at that against this schedule, which is very difficult. Maybe not the most difficult in the league now that Dallas doesn't have Parsons. I know that sort of changed the strength of schedule equation a little bit, but it's very difficult. So if they double their win total against this schedule, I think you have to look at that and say, okay, we made some strides here, but it's so murky because the specter of when do you go to Jackson Dart? Why do you go to Jackson Dart? And what impact that has on the overall record of the team sort of hangs there. Because I actually wrote this morning, and I don't know if you guys saw it. I did a bold predictions piece that just posted shortly before we started to record. And I was talking about Jackson Dart. And one of the questions that I have is, okay, if the Giants go 0-4, whether he's playing well or not, what point is there for Russell Wilson to continue playing? Okay, because what point is there for the Giants to continue with the 37-year-old quarterback? But what if they start the season 3-2? I think the Commanders are vulnerable. I think the Cowboys are vulnerable. I think the Saints is a game the Giants should win. What if they start the season 3-2? What if they get to 10, 11 games into the season and they're 5-5, 5-6 on the periphery of the playoff hunt? They have a chance to make the playoffs as a wild card. What's more important, making the playoffs or giving Jackson Dart, 5-6 games of experience? It's, for me, that's the Tom Coughlin, Kurt Warner, Eli Manning decision all over again. And I don't know what would be more important for the Giants. Maybe if Daboll's on the hot seat and feels like he has to win games, maybe he just puts the pedal to the metal and goes for the playoff spot. Or maybe if he feels like his relationship with Jackson Dart is the thing that's going to save him anyway, maybe he puts Dart on the field and says, we've already shown that we're better than we were a year ago. Now it's time for us to see what we've got in this rookie quarterback. So I'm fascinated if they get into that position, what decision he would make.
Ed, let's finish up with some injury talk. Malik Neighbors, he was a guy we were sort of concerned with throughout the offseason. What's he going to look like? He did make a return to practice. We talked about some of the players that could be rusty for Washington, understandably so, like Terry McLaurin. What about the Giants receiver? What are fair expectations for Malik Neighbors, considering all the time he's missed?
Well, Malik Neighbors' expectations are that Malik Neighbors is going to dominate, that he's not going to skip a beat. He said the other day, he was asked about that, and he said, when game day shows up, I'm ready to go. And I wouldn't doubt it, for the simple reason that what we've seen out of Neighbors in training camp when he's been on the field has been really, really good. And I wonder, there was a shoulder injury. He fell on the shoulder and he missed half of practice and wasn't supposed to practice the next day, and he practiced anyway. ran 11 on 11, practiced anyway. Missed a little bit of time with what he called a minor back thing. It's a little bit annoying that one thing after another seems to crop up with him. But I fully expect him to be the Malik Neighbors that we saw a year ago on Sunday. The injury for me that's concerning, I think we talked about it at the top of the show a little bit, is Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas had that Lisfranc surgery probably halfway through last season. He's a 320-pound guy, and he's still not 100% from that. Theo Johnson, the Giants rookie tight end a year ago, had the same surgery. Theo Johnson's 50, 60 pounds lighter than Andrew Thomas, and Theo Johnson's been full go since the beginning of OTAs. It's just different, and Andrew Thomas has admitted, for a guy that's as big as I am, this is a very difficult injury to work through. He revealed that he had a second surgery in the spring to take a screw out of that foot, and because the screw that was put in there to hold everything together was bothering him. So that's the concern. I would be very surprised if Andrew Thomas plays on Sunday. He's had one padded practice. He's had very little contact. He said as of late last week, he had done no team periods at all, no 11 on 11 work at all. So all he had done is individual and walk through kind of stuff and drills and all that. So I don't think he's ready. I think it'll be 2 or 3 weeks before we see him. Fingers crossed that when we do see him, he's healthy and he stays on the field.
All right. Fair enough, Ed. I'm looking forward next week to talking about a football game that matters. We'll have a record. The Giants will be 1-0, or they'll be 0-1, and we'll talk all about it and talk about their performance against the Washington Commanders. Ed, looking forward to it. Enjoy the season, my friend. We will too.
All right. Thanks, guys.